Once you've satisfied your hunger, get ready for more of the hottest casino games in Vegas. Our 24-hour, 30-table non-smoking poker room proudly hosts all the most popular poker games with a variety of betting limits. Visit the poker room for a schedule of daily tournaments. Whether you're going to hold 'em or fold 'em, the best place for poker is at South Point Casino. You'll notice that our craps tables are usually the loudest in the casino. If you've never played, join one of our free craps lessons to find out what makes this game so exciting. Check with the craps dealer for schedules and give it a roll. Bingo is also an exciting way to spend your time. We offer 7 sessions of bingo every day. Bingo! And each session includes a cash ball jackpot, 12 bingo games, a progressive double action game, and a $10,000 bonus coverall. Electronic units are available. If you haven't played bingo with us, give it a try today. Guests can also get in on the action at our one-of-a-kind race and sports books. 2 separate rooms designed to maximize your experience and comfort. Our sports book, with over 400 seats, puts you right in the middle of the action, 24 hours a day. The friendly ticket writers are happy to help, and it's conveniently located next to the famous Del Mar Deli, where you'll find supersized portions of delicious deli items like roast beef, pastrami, and Reuben sandwiches, or soups, salads, and pizza, plus spectacular desserts fit for a king. And right next door is the race book, over 150 seats, each with its own TV screen. There are 16 interactive player terminals, so you can bet right from your seat.
It's Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio. Here's Jeff Parles and Alex White.
Good morning. Welcome in. It is the middle of November, which means it's the home stretch in college football. We got you covered here on Sports by the Book. I'm Jeff Parles. She is Alex White. Alex, you know, we're deep into this thing now. We're 2 weeks away from you having to make sure you get your $25,000 rivalry parlay card in. Make sure you get it in. Jackpot card, $5 behind us. $25,000 guaranteed. Very well could be more than $25,000 guaranteed. If you go 15 to 15, you're at least going to get a share of that here at the South Point Rampart and up at Gone Gaming Properties in Mesquite with Casablanca and Virgin River.
Some of those games looking tougher and tougher as the season goes on.
You know what's interesting? Because I think, yes, some are. I think some are getting more clear.
That's good.
So half and half. Some of these have gotten much harder. Some of these have, again, if UNLV loses to Nevada, that would be an absolute disaster. So there's no free bingo squares in sports betting, but that one's pretty close. Even on Nevada, been one of the more unlucky teams so far this year in college football, according to our friends at College Football Stats. All right, let's dive in today. And how about this? Actually, starting with a rotation number that actually has the game at the right time in comparison to where the rotation number is for once. Texas on the road at Arkansas, all Southwest Conference rivalry game now in the SEC. Arkansas has been bet the whole week, and it's interesting to see how the market has played this out because this has been one of the more aggressive movers this week. Chris and company opened this game on Monday morning at 14.5. They took it to 14 within 15 minutes. And then the bettors have taken this down to 12. So Chris and company have the lowest number in the market right now because the bettors have started to come in on Texas this morning. It was 12 basically market wide and then 12.5 and 13 at other shops. It's mostly 13 in the market now. 57 your total on this one behind us, which is also market low on this game. So if you like the favorite and you like the over, if you're going with a full Nicotero, you got to come here because the best on the favorite and the best on the over for this one right now.
I do lean to the favorite here in this one. I made Texas 14. I just don't trust Arkansas. We don't know which version we're going to get from them. Offensively, they've been very good. They're fifth right now in total yards per game, but defensively, their numbers are pretty bad. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop this Texas offense. And I know Quinn Ewers has been a little up and down, not as consistent as everybody expected from him this year, but still, this Texas just has so many weapons. So lean to the favorite. My numbers say under as well, but I'm not going there because I had an under with Arkansas 2 weeks ago with Ole Miss, and Ole Miss put plenty of points on the board. So nothing official, but if I were to play it, it would be the favorite.
This is a very difficult handicap because Arkansas is we use this word with Texas Tech. I'll use it with Arkansas. They're erratic. Mm-hmm. They're erratic because you can get the version of Arkansas you just mentioned where Ole Miss is still scoring points on them 2 weeks ago. 63 of them in that game.
Yep.
That was a nice 30-1 shot for most points by a team in the FBS level in that week 2 weeks ago. But then you have the Arkansas team where their defense for 3 consecutive weeks after really playing a poor first half against UAB, they held Auburn to 14. Now, granted, that game was a comedy of errors on both sides. They held A&M to only 21, and then Tennessee, they held to 14. So they had 3 weeks where their defense played at a very high level, but then you have getting destroyed by LSU, put 34, and quite frankly, that was the lowest number LSU could have scored in that game, and then the 63 against Ole Miss. So I don't know what I'm getting out of Arkansas, and that makes this a very hard game to handicap. And then the other thing I'll bring up with Texas real quick, and we mentioned this with Chris and Vinny yesterday. You look at just the way that the conferences are now. They're so big that everyone's conference schedule is so unbalanced, where you can get South Carolina, who plays 8 teams that are probably going to end the year in the top 45 or 50 in most power rankings in conference. And Texas, their best opponent that they've beaten in conference, of course, they lost to Georgia. Their best win in conference is at Vanderbilt. So they haven't played anyone other than Georgia, and Georgia smacked them. So I don't know how good Texas really is. So hard game all the way around. You lean the favorite, though, in this one, right?
I do lean the favorite. I made them 14. And with those points you just brought up about their defense, they are coming off a bye, Arkansas. Yes. So maybe they can improve that defense off that bye and keep this under.
It's hard to be worse than they were 2 weeks ago, right?
Yes,
hard absolutely. To be worse than that. Good, solid game to kick off your day, though, with Texas and Arkansas. All right, let's go North Carolina and Wake. This is not the most attractive games, Alex White. UNC's 10 at home in this. This is the triad game, the Winston-Salem, not too far off from Chapel Hill. 64. For this one, with UNC a 10-point favorite, down from 11 earlier in the week.
Nothing for me in this one. I did make North Carolina 11 in this one, and the total a little bit lower as well, so a little bit of a lean there. But looking at their points for and points against in conference play, they get a lot worse than their overall for the season. So, I mean, North Carolina 2-6-1 against the spread, and then you got Wake 2-5-2 covering spreads this year. So this was a stay away for me.
This is a look to the total and only the total for me in this game, where you have 2 defenses that are not any good. Now, the question mark here, as always, is will we get enough offense on both sides? Last week for Wake, remember they played on a Friday night. They gave Cal 46. That was 46-36. So a game played in the 80s last week for the Deacons. Now, if you go a little more box score diving, it was one of those funky box scores where Cal at 5.7 yards per play and Wake at 5.1 yards per play. It doesn't really scream obscene over like it was. But when you add in that there were 4 turnovers on the Wake side that led directly to 3 Cal scores, all right, you could see that. UNC, we've talked about all year, their defense, when their defense has been bad, it's been the worst in the country, arguably. Of course, that 70 burger against JMU. Now, UNC's defense their last 2 times out has actually been much better.
Yes, they have.
Now, granted, one of those games against Florida State, who's barely a college football team this year, held them to 11 and under 5 yards per play. And against the Virginia Cavaliers, the game before that, Virginia only had 14. They were under 5 yards per play as well, and they also forced 2 Virginia turnovers. So last 2 weeks, much better against inferior competition. That could also pop today. So in-game watch more so than anything for me, Alex.
So leaning to the over, though, for in-game. Trying to get a better number.
Let's see how it plays, because this could go both ways, but I would lean to the over in an in-play if the circumstances are right. All right, let's go to Morgantown next. West Virginia hosting Baylor. Still awaiting the status of Garrett Green, but West Virginia's won 2 straight. Right now, the lean is that he is going to play, according to Pete Thamel. That is the lean, but The number went up after he got rolled in. So it went from 1.5 to 2 now, with Baylor the favorite on the road, total 59.5. Alex, even though West Virginia's home field has gone backwards over the last few years, this probably is a good spot for WVU. I still don't fully buy Baylor. I don't love their defense. Their offense has been much improved since going to Robertson. But this would be a nice lean, probably even a play, actually, at plus 110 on West Virginia here.
I did take the points here with West Virginia. This is one of my better plays, one of my better dogs, if Ralph is still listening here. But, Baylor is on a crazy overrun, 6 straight overs, and they have been much better. They've won 3 in a row off the bye. But in the process and winning those games, they're just outscoring opponents. They've given up 35 a game in conference. So I'm going with the better defense here in West Virginia, holding teams to 27.5 here in Big 12 play. So I like the money line as well. I do think they can win this one outright.
West Virginia, if you're just looking at the way this has gone, by the way, both of these teams 5-4. Winner of this will get to a bowl eligibility number of 6. West Virginia gets UCF and Texas Tech. They should be able to win one of those 2 games if they don't win today. But again, I'm a little. I get with what we saw the last few weeks with Marshall in there, and West Virginia was good in those 2 games. Now, granted, look at the opponents. Arizona, even though they won last night, a mess. Cincinnati, poorly coached. And that game really got flipped on its head by a really bad decision by Sorsby, which turned into a pick 6 the other way. And that game it did change completely after that. But I'm a little surprised that this is still West Virginia as a home dog. Now that Green is likely to play, according to Pete Thamel here today. So we're both on the underdog, Ralph. So there we go in that one. All right, let's go to Annapolis next. Good game in the American Athletic. Tulane into the college football playoff rankings this week. They go to take on Navy. So bad 2 weeks for the midshipmen. Back-to-back losses obviously get destroyed by Notre Dame, and then that head-scratcher in Houston against Rice. They bounced back last week with a win in Tampa against South Florida. Now they take on arguably the best team in the conference. And, Alex, there's some 7.5 in the market on this game. I would be obliged to take that with the hook on Navy. Now, the question mark with Navy now is the competition has gone up. And they did not handle it well against Notre Dame, obviously. They kept turning the ball over, 6 of them in a 51-14 loss. And quite frankly, it could have been worse if Notre Dame kept the foot on the gas pedal all game. I'm curious to see how they handle this upping a competition here again today. But they are at home. And for Tulane, Tulane wins out. They will have an opportunity to make the college football playoff if Boise State stumbles at all the rest of the way.
7.5, I'm with you. I think that is a good play here on the dog. Now, I will just say I don't have a good feel for Tulane, and my number is, I made them 3.5. So okay. I don't think I'm high enough on them yet, because really breaking it down and looking at their numbers, their median points for in conference play is 45 and points against is 10. That's pretty good. And you already mentioned they are the best team in this conference. Now, Navy, though, I do think that they can turn it back around. I think those 2 losses, clearly Notre Dame, top 10 team in the country, and then it kind of just spiraled from there the next game. But they've already got another win under their belt, so I think they can hang around in this one. They're still a very good football team, and we know how disciplined the service academies are.
Look, win today, you're actually, if you're Navy, you pull this upset, you handle your business against ECU next week, or 2 weeks from now, I should say, you're in the AAC title game because you'd hold the tiebreaker over Tulane. So, again, it's all in front of them for Navy. Probably not a college football playoff berth.
No.
At this point, too far behind the 8 ball. That loss to Rice was bad, really bad loss. So, no college football playoff berth probably on the line, but an AAC title game appearance. If you win today, you're Army-Navy in back-to-back weeks. More than likely at that point, if Navy were to spring the upset here today at home. All right, moving along. Oh, here we go. One of my favorites. Pitt hosting Clemson. 12.5 behind us for this one right now. And this one is on the move, which means we're getting close to an Eli Holstein decision. As of right now, the expectation is he will not play in this game against Clemson. Reality has really struck back on Pitt over the last few weeks. They get decimated by SMU, which SMU is really good. There's no shame in that, going on the road, getting crushed. Last week was bad. I know Holstein got hurt midstream with a concussion, but you can't lose at home to Virginia. And they did. And Virginia really dominated the second half. And now Pitt welcomes Clemson, who last week played one of the worst halves I've seen from anyone in the first half last week. Shutout, only points came on a special teams gaffe. And here you are in the second half, really just beating up on Vatech. Dominant second half, cover all numbers. You got there pretty easily when it was all said and done. 12.5 on the road. There's a 12 and there's a bunch of 12s. There's even an 11.5 in the market on this one with a total of 50.
I would lean to the dog here, but my favorite play in this is the over.
Oh.
And I'm going to be honest, I went over 53, so I have a terrible number. So here at 50, I really like it. And I've talked about Pitt all year long, but they play the fourth quickest in the country, 22.5 seconds per play. They're also passing 55% of the time. I'm not too concerned if it's Holstein or Nate Yarnell, because I know he didn't look great in last week's game, but it was a quarterback competition, and they went with the freshman, and clearly it was a good decision. But I still think he's about ranked the same, and I think with another week of practice, they can put up points here against this Clemson defense, who is 41st in the country in yards allowed, 55th in passing yards. So I think we'll be okay. Clemson 59th in points allowed total, 23 per game. And even 22 against the ACC. But if you don't like that 50, one thing about Clemson, and you just mentioned it with the last game, they have been such slow starters this year, especially in the first quarter. They've had really big second quarters, but if there's no scoring in that first quarter, you'll get a much better number to go over. But then I think it's going to be a lot of fireworks between these two.
You know, it's interesting with Clemson because we've talked about it, where they have really beaten up on bad competition this year. And you look at the way that their schedule has broken out. Of course, their two best teams they played. Georgia, first half was good.
Yep.
Like holding the game ahead at halftime, and then just got smacked in the second half. It's also abundantly clear that Georgia's not Georgia this year. And Louisville beat them up and won that game, and 33-21 was basically the lowest margin you could have come with in that game. I think they're going to roll today, though, Alex. This is just one of those where this Pitt team, starting Yarnell, who's the backup, unimpressive in what we've seen so far this year. And look, I don't know how Pitt was not in the top 10 of my luck rankings that we had earlier in the week. They were 14th. So that just shows how bad the last 2 weeks have been, dumping them down. But I'm in a scenario where I think this is a run out. I'm concerned about Pitt's ability to score, but I am not concerned about Clemson's ability to score in this game. So your over is live, especially if Clemson gets up by margin and stuff softens up in the second half with that one. All right, let's go to Wrigley Field next. Northwestern hosting Ohio State. This is one of the most fascinating bet games of the entire season so far. 31 at the open. I had no quibble with that number, Alex. I thought it was fair. Down to 28. There's even 27.5 in the market with a total of 44. Look, if you love Northwestern like the market has, more power to you. Could they play this game within 4 touchdowns? Yeah, absolutely. Ohio State could sleepwalk. This could be like 31-7 and you win. But boy, taking the worst of the number when I could have got 31 or 30 earlier in the week. Oh boy, I don't know if I can justify that at this rate, Alex.
No, I have no interest in this dog either. I made it 29.5, so it was a stay away for me. A lot of people are just talking about Ohio State. Look ahead. They do have Indiana up next, but I don't think that they can afford to. I mean, they know right now with the SEC how every team is jumping around each week if they are in the playoffs or not. So I think they'll be focused enough. They do start slow, though, in these early games. So if you're banking on Northwestern defensively to hang around in this one, it's not a terrible angle, but nothing for me.
Last week, 45-0 over Purdue. Again, bottom feeder Northwestern. Not quite Purdue level, but again, probably power rate. And of the 18 in the Big Ten, they probably are power rated 17th or 16th, depending on what your numbers are. So again, back-to-back weeks against the bottom of the conference before Indiana goes marching in to the shoe next week. By the way, Kurt Cignetti got a giant extension this morning. So at least for Indiana, good on you. At least getting Cignetti paid and making that buyout a lot more if someone wants to try and poach over the next few years. All right, let's go. Oh, we'll keep it in the Big Ten. No, boy, we're on a Big Ten run of some mediocrity here, Alex. Maryland hosting Rutgers. Credit the Scarlet Knights last week. Didn't expect that at all, where they, at home, without their best player, Kyle Monangai, looked like they had an offense. Cal Jimenez's revenge game actually kind of worked there, Alex. Now they go down I-95 to Maryland. Terps really need this game. Terps are 4-5. If they're going to go to a bowl, they need to win these two home games because they're not winning at Penn State the final week of the year. So 4.5 with Maryland, 54.5 your total, down from 5 yesterday, Alex.
And I think that's a good angle there about needing that game to try and get bowl eligible, because we saw it last night with Washington. Washington has a bye next week, and then they have Oregon. They needed that game.
Yep.
So I would lean to the favorite here in this one. A lot of people like the over, but I think you've missed the best of the number there. If you got over 52, I think that's good, but now I think we're a little bit too high for these two offenses. So no official play, though, in this one.
So Kyle Monangai is questionable today for Rutgers, still in concussion protocol after missing last week. But, boy, Rutgers offense, again, the Rutgers team that started out, Alex, with a win over Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, that ridiculous win on a Friday night against Washington. Yep. They were 4-0, and then just hit the wall with just 4 bad performances in a row. And out of nowhere, with that win last week against Minnesota, have been playing their best football coming into that game. So,
and one of the best against the spread.
Yeah, good luck figuring out the middle of the Big Ten. It's all basically the same at this point. They're all very average football teams in the middle of that conference. This would only be a take, but it's also the worst of the numbers. So be cautious on that with Rutgers in this one. All right. We finally found a week where they're not betting Purdue, Alex. Finally. It took them looking dreadful last week against Ohio State, and now having to go Ohio State, Penn State back-to-back for the Boilers. At least this one's at home in West Lafayette. Penn State is 30, 51.5. Penn State looked great last week. Just really put it on Washington, and quite frankly, 31-6 was about as close as it could have been with how badly Penn State whipped them. But, Alex, if the bettors are bailing on Purdue, doesn't it kind of feel like it's the week they'll cover then, right? Where they're finally bailing on them, like, our numbers were wrong on them. We finally admitted in week 12 of the college football season. I don't know, though. That's a lot of points. Penn State knows the number usually.
That's right.
So
that's the big thing.
It's tough to justify a bet either way in this game.
I think that number is perfect. That's exactly where I made it. I made the total 50, so it's a stay away. Especially we know James Franklin. He will try and run up the score if he has the chance.
That he will. He knows the spread. He's one that we knows it for sure. All right, let's go to Albuquerque next. A sentence I haven't uttered on this show on Saturday this year. New Mexico hosting Washington State. You know that we talked about this game actually at length yesterday on the show with Chris and Vinny. This is one of the more intriguing games for me on the day because Wazoo, who by all power ratings perspectives, I don't think they're even remotely close to that number 18 ranking they have in the college football playoff ratings. But they keep winning. Now, you look at the competition they played. Remember, for them and Oregon State, they have the schedule share with the Mountain West. And Wazoo got the bad draw of having to go to the blue turf, and they got crushed in that game. And
we like the Broncos in that one.
That was the easiest bet we've had all year on Boise.
I think it was, yeah.
But look, they beat Texas Tech, mid-tier Big 12 team. They beat Washington. We know Washington not at Husky Stadium this year. Yes, that game was in Seattle, but it was at the home of the Seahawks. So not in their home building. Totally different. They haven't really beaten anyone these last 4 weeks. Struggled with Fresno State. They beat Hawaii. They beat San Diego State. They beat Utah State. Woohoo! You beat 4 teams you're favored against. Now you're favored on the road at New Mexico here. Alex, New Mexico, if you have not been watching them out there, folks, their totals have been outrageously high. And other than the 2 road games against Colorado State and San Diego State, those totals have been correctly outrageously high. And at 72, boy, I can't believe I'm about to do this. The over is the only thing you can look at here. With this total being this ridiculously high, New Mexico will score in this game. They have the offense to compete with the Wazoo's defense. And I don't see New Mexico getting many stops. I expect this game to be played in the high 80s, actually, Alex. So I like this game over 72.
I don't hate it. I have been on some New Mexico overs, but I'm actually on New Mexico today. I took the points here. I got 11. I'm just in principle of Washington State being 18th. They've played the 86th toughest schedule, and you just kind of ran down it. Their defense is not very good either, so I think that's too many points here for the dog at home. Tough place to play. And Washington State, they have Oregon State up next, which is really their biggest game of the year. So over and dog for us in this one. But I do want to go back to the Auburn, too. I'm sorry. I thought it was
Louisiana Monroe. Chris Andrew, one of Chris Andrew's favorites this year, who not on him this week. 24.5, 2 games in front of it, Sean. 24.5 with a total of 46 on this one. Auburn, again, in the unlucky rankings, number 1 unluckiest team in college football so far this year, which to anyone who's been paying attention, not a shock at all.
No, it's really not. This is one of my favorite totals, actually, and an under. So that's good because I've got a few overs here. But Monroe plays very slow. That's probably why Chris does like them. They control the clock. They run 7th most in the country, and they play the 2nd slowest. I think they have a pretty good defense that can slow this Auburn team down. And with them being unlucky, we've had a lot of unders here for Auburn as well. So under 46 for me in this one.
Yeah, Auburn, UCF, Kansas, who we'll get to in a minute, the 3 unluckiest in the college football season so far this year. And quite frankly, if you've been paying attention like us, makes sense that those top 3 are the top 3. And, we'll bring Kansas up now. Kansas goes to Provo. And, again, this is just the numbers just telling you what I think you need to know in this game. And we've talked about BYU at length. By the way, they're number 3 in the luckiest ranking, BYU, which I was stunned they were not number 1. We'll get to number 1 actually in a few games from now. And actually kind of surprised me who was at number 1. Without thinking about it, even though it made sense after you did. So BYU last week, they don't cover. They win, though. Causes Utah's AD to have an epic freak out after the game. Mark Harlan called out the credibility of the officiating crew, which you don't see that very often, even though sometimes it could be justified. Might have been in that spot. Mm-hmm. BYU, 2.5 at home against Kansas. Open 3.5 here at the South Point. Chris moved it to 3 and then got bet down further. Alex, I'm going to get BYU at some point this year. It's going to happen, and I think it happens tonight. Where Kansas, look, you could have given up on the season at 1-6, easily given up completely. Last week, they were awesome against Iowa State. They looked like the team they were a year ago. 45 points. They end up winning by 9. That game was never really even competitive. But their defense forced turnovers. Their offense looked great. Jalen Daniels looked like Jalen Daniels before he got hurt. And if that version of Jalen Daniels shows up in Provo, I like Kansas outright. And yes, it's the 3-6 team over the undefeated team. But look, sometimes the number's telling you what the right side is. And I think the number's telling you it here tonight.
So I am on the other side. We do have
where's Vinny?
2-way action on the desk. I laid the 2.5 here with BYU. I think this defense is for real. If you look at the improvement from last year to this year, last year they were 99th in points allowed, giving up an average of 30. This year, they're giving up an average of 20. So I think they'll be ready in this one. I think the letdown will affect Utah more than it will BYU.
I agree with that.
Losing in that fashion, and that was their Super Bowl. BYU still has everything in front of them. Now, Kansas, you brought it up. They have looked much better the last 3 weeks. They've won 2 of the 3 games. They've covered in all 3. But it wasn't really their defense. It was mostly Jalen Daniels. And the one thing I think BYU does have an advantage is they did see him last year. So defensively, that's the unit I'm banking on here, and I think that they'll be prepared for him today. I think next week is the week. BYU going to Arizona State might be the tricky one for them.
I think they're going to lose both personally. That's just me, but we'll see. Again, the one thing, and then you mentioned the one thing in there I 100% agree on, where BYU's defense has been very good. There's no arguing that. And look, even though they've been lucky, if you go off the expected wins, they're still an expected 6.5 win team. So they're 9-0, so they're 2.5 wins above expectation. But look, they are still a solid football team. They're not the sixth best team in the country like they are ranked right now. And again, at some point, when the numbers, at some point you're going to get beat. Now, granted, it could be like TCU 2 years ago, where they lose in the Big 12 title game and then lose by 1,000 in the national title game. Highly doubt that to be the case, but again, it can happen. It's college football. It's a small sample size. You can defy the numbers a lot longer than you can in other sports just because of it. All right, let's go to the farm next. Palo Alto for Stanford hosting Louisville. So, Alex, this is one of those where I'm trying to look for reasons to take the points with Stanford here, because we're north of 3 touchdowns now. At 22, that moved this morning from 21. Louisville's really good. And you look at the quality of opponent that Louisville lost to this year. They lost to Notre Dame. I think more likely than not, smooth sailing into the college football playoff for them. And then they beat the 2 teams that are most likely to play in the ACC title game. They lost to SMU and they lost to Miami, both by a touchdown. This team's good. They just haven't handled the high end of their schedule particularly great. And granted, I thought they should have beat Notre Dame. Refs got involved in that one for sure. But in this spot, weird travel, Stanford, again, just not any good. Just playing out the string at this point at 2-7. They got annihilated the last time out against NC State, giving that bad offense 59 points in that game, which kind of scares you. But 22 is a lot at home. So this would be a lean to the Cardinal, but I don't feel great about it, Alex White.
Well, both of these teams coming off a bye, because otherwise I think you could have used, Louisville coming off of that win against Clemson, but now they've had a full week to prepare here. And I thought Stanford was a lot more competitive than the numbers really show. And you just brought up NC State, 59-28. Wake, they lost 27-24, but SMU 40-10. So this just, I think Louisville could run away with this one offensively. I don't know if Stanford's defense can really slow them down.
Yeah, it's maybe the over, honestly, at 57.5, if you can get enough from Stanford in this one with Louisville. All right, staying in the ACC and more east to west travel. The luckiest team in America is the Syracuse Orange, according to CFB data. Expected to have 3 wins, they have 6. So 3 full wins against expectation, which kind of shows you how lucky they were in those wins, because they had the most unlucky performance of all time against Pitt with the 3 pick sixes mixed in there. The Va-Tech game, pretty fortunate. UNLV game, pretty fortunate. Now to go to Cal, who's playing their best football of the year right now. 10 behind us. There's some 10.5 in the market as well. Boy, I know it's going on the lucky team, but 10.5 feels like a ton in this game to be passing up if you can get that. Even 10. Look, could Cal win this game by 3 touchdowns? Absolutely. Kyle McCord's splits away from the dome, or let me rephrase that. Kyle McCord splits from not indoors, which is hilarious to say about a team that plays in one of the worst weather cities in the country, but because they play inside, they are an indoor team. He hasn't been great outside at all this year. Struggled last week at Boston College. Of course, the horrific performance against Pitt. This feels like a lot of points, though, to pass up with Syracuse. So I'll probably take 10.5 and be regretting it early in the football game, Alex.
UNLV should have moved their game to Sam Boyd and seen how that went.
You know what? Even though it might have helped, I think we're all happy that game wasn't at Sam Boyd.
I've been to too many games there, but I don't know, Jeff. That's tough. I made this number 9.5, so I think it is correct. I would lean more just by feel to the favorite here. They are playing their best football, Cal. They've been really impressive. I mean, started with that Oregon State 44-7 win, but now we kind of know what Oregon State is. But then they followed it up with a good 46-36 win over Wake last week. So I don't know. It's tough. This one's a stay away for sure.
Let's keep it in the wow, all these weird ACC games that are new because of the new realignment. SMU 18 against Boston College. 54 to total, so tumultuous week for BC. Thomas Castellanos into the transfer portal. James will get the start. He was great in relief last week against Syracuse. I also remember he played that game against Western Kentucky where Boston College was basically dead in that game and led him to a big-time comeback. It was fairly impressive for Grayson James in that one. 18, though, in this, Alex, with a total of 54. This one is starting to also prop up as well. You're starting to see a bunch of 18.5 and 19 in the market on this.
At 19, I'm very tempted. They're just so well coached, and you just brought up they've already kind of had to go through these without Castellanos, so might be a little boost for them. But SMU is a really good football team, so it's tough. That number's pretty dead on with what I made it, and the total as well. But I don't know. Tempted to take the dog here.
I'm in the same boat as you. It feels like a lot of points, but you look at what SMU has done since that loss. Again, BYU loss doesn't look as bad as it did at the time. At the time, it was like, whoa, SMU is losing at home to a team that's going to be at the bottom of the Big 12. Obviously, it hasn't played out that way. But since then, and whatever happened in that bye week, changed the whole complexion of the season because, of course, they smacked TCU right out of it. Mm-hmm. And other than the TCU game, other than the Duke game, that was the hell game for them. They turned the ball over 6 times. They get very fortunate Duke's kicker couldn't make a kick, and Duke got 0 points off those 6 turnovers. Normal circumstance, that's a loss, and we're not even talking about the ponies in the college football playoff discussion. But other than that, 26-point win against Florida State, 24-point win against TCU, 7-point win on the road against a very good Louisville team, as we mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. Beat Stanford by 30, beat Pitt by 23. They're crushing teams other than that Duke game. Could be very easily another one of those circumstances here today, but it's a lot of points with a well-coached team. And Boston College, other than Louisville, is definitely the best coached team that they will have seen so far this year, even including BYU. All right, let's go to the big one. Georgia hosting Tennessee. And this is an elimination game for the Georgia Bulldogs. A sentence I don't think a lot of us expected to even utter, even with how hard their schedule was going into the year. But last week, they got destroyed by Ole Miss. And quite frankly, it should have been worse than 28-10 because Ole Miss kept kicking field goals. Carson Beck against the higher-end competition just turns the ball over. And last week, honestly, the beginning of that game last week, Alex, sack, Dart throws a pick for Ole Miss. Georgia cashes it in right away. And it's like, uh-oh. Ole Miss isn't ready for this moment. There's going to be one of these Georgia thumpings where it's like, oh, they're down. Nope. Ole Miss after that was clearly the right side the whole way in that blowout win. Nico Maliava on the Tennessee side is cleared. So expect him to be the starter here tonight after suffering a head injury last week against Mississippi State midstream. Didn't really matter for Tennessee because Mississippi State is not any good. From as high in this game, Alex White, here at the South Point, as high as 11, now down to 8.5. Now, it's interesting. The market just popped back up to 9.5, basically everywhere but here. So, interesting to see the push and pull of this game throughout the morning and the afternoon before this 4:30 Pacific start.
This is a hard handicap because Georgia coming off that loss, their whole season being on the line here, could get a little bit out of hand. But I like this Tennessee team. I think they're really good, and they're doing enough offensively, but they're really good defensively. So I think they can slow down this Georgia offense that just is not the same, like we talked about. missed the best of the number here. I wish I was still getting 11 with knowing that Nico I was playing, but I mean, that is part of the reason why it has moved. So nothing officially for me, but I'm leaning to the dog.
I said it yesterday. If Magliulo plays, Tennessee wins outright. I'm sticking to it. Now, Georgia off the loss is absolutely a concerning deal because Georgia doesn't lose 2 in a row under Kirby Smart once he started getting the rolling there. Tennessee, if you look at the state, Tennessee's had a weird year, Alex, because I don't know if they're as good as that 8-1 record shows, but they beat Alabama. Mm-hmm. They have handled everything in front of them. Now, granted, there is something to be said about this unbalanced conference schedule we mentioned before. Other than Alabama, they haven't really played any of the high-end teams until Georgia here today. They played Florida at the right time. Quite frankly, they should have lost that game to Florida in overtime. Oklahoma, they played them early in the year before the wheels really came off for the Sooners. They only won that game by 10. Arkansas, we already talked about, they lost that game outright. And they haven't covered the last 2 weeks against 2 of the weaker teams in the conference, Kentucky and Mississippi State. But something with Carson Beck seems broken for at least 2024. Does not handle good defenses. And this Tennessee defense, because what do we talk about when we talk about Tennessee usually? High-flying offense. Yep. Tennessee's pass rush is awesome. They and Ole Miss, everyone realized by the end of last week how good Ole Miss's defense was, even though for us, we all knew. Tennessee has a high-end defensive front, and that should cause Beck to struggle in this game. Now, could Georgia win this game by 3 touchdowns? Of course they could. Absolutely. But I like Tennessee plus the points. I like Tennessee outright. Take a little bit of a dabble. Look for the best money line price. You can still get about $3, closer to $3 than plus 270 out there right now in the marketplace, Alex.
So that would be quite the mix-up here going into next week.
Well,
Georgia's
be the end
season,
of Georgia. Yeah.
And that would be a huge win for Tennessee.
It would put Tennessee in a scenario where even if they dumped that last game in Nashville against Vanderbilt, they probably would still be safe at 10-2. You don't want to play test fate, but it also would put Tennessee in the complete driver's seat to play in Atlanta in the SEC title game. And it's been a long time since Tennessee has played in the SEC title game. I have to double check it, but going back in the early millennium portions for Tennessee with that. All right, let's keep it in the SEC. Missouri will go to South Carolina. Alex, Vinny, and Chris both have South Carolina as a top 10 power rated team entering the week.
Wow.
And the Gamecocks are getting bet against because there was news out of Missouri this morning. Our friends or a good friend of mine, Gabe DeArmond, who, of course, runs one of the best Mizzou sites out there, Power Mizzou, reporting earlier this morning that the expectation is Brady Cook is going to start this game. So this will be the second time that Cook has been listed as doubtful during the week and would end up playing. So keep that in mind with Mizzou injury reports moving forward now that we have them. So down to 11.5. There's a lot of 12.5 in the market still on this one. Be honest with you, Alex, even with Cook in, I don't think this is a good matchup for Mizzou. I think they're going to struggle to move the ball. South Carolina, when they're not turning the ball over, their offense has been humming, especially late. See how low this goes. You might even get an 11 by the time this game kicks. I would lay with South Carolina in this game against Mizzou.
I'm upset I missed that 44.5 because I think this is an awesome under. These are 2 really good defenses, and I think that the Mizzou can slow down South Carolina's offense as well. So I'm going to wait and see if I can get a better number. If somebody scores early, try and go under a better number here.
Well, I'm not going to discuss Mizzou unders after last week, where that was all. That was all Frank.
About that.
That was all. Well, Sean doesn't want to talk about it either. But that was all. That was what Frank Nicotero did to me on a text message is not nice. Let's just go with that. When you bet unders, don't do that. Don't say you won the under when it's the third quarter. Please don't do that. Then you get the first SEC game in 25 years with 4 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes of regulation. So that's what happens there. Quick shout out to the chat. Michael A is in there. John Vicarious Vegas. Not Sean in there? No, not Sean. Not Sean's in there? Good. Not Sean's in there as well on the chat here on a Saturday morning. All right, Alex, let's go to Ames. Iowa State? Cincinnati? 7. We're down to 7. Interesting on this. Open 9. Was 7.5 for the majority week. Now at this flat 7, 53 to total. I know it's been ugly the last 2 weeks for Iowa State, where their season really imploded. Horrible home loss to Texas Tech. And then last week, I know it was a 9-point loss. That was not a competitive game against Kansas. They really got whipped. And it was window dressing at the end to make it a 1-score game. I think this is light now at 7. Now that we're at 7, this feels like a good bounce back spot for Iowa State against an inconsistent, still better than I thought Cincinnati team, but still inconsistent at that with the Bearcats.
I like Iowa State here as well, but I was on the wrong side last week. I was on them against Kansas, so I have not played it yet. But now here at a touchdown, I'm with you. Kind of a buy low point here. So I think that is the right side. And after 2 losses in a row, both of them come into this game losing 2 in a row. So I trust Iowa State more. They are the better defense of the 2 as well. Just Big 12 favorites right now are a little bit scary because we know the Big 12, they're just beating up on each other.
It is again, this mid-tier Big 12. And the Big 12 race is, to me, the most intriguing one left because of the fact that BYU is still undefeated. And as long as BYU is undefeated, the possibility of that league that does not deserve 2 bids, getting 2 bids looms. Because if BYU is 12-0, going to Arlington, and let's say they lose to Kansas State by 3, the committee's probably going to put them in. Not saying that's right, but they probably will. But for Iowa State, boy, you had a golden opportunity to make Farmageddon the last week of the season a win and in scenario for the Big 12 title game, and they really blew it. And they need a lot of help. They need help in order to get into a Big 12 title game. All right, let's go to Notre Dame next. Virginia at the Irish, 21.5 on this one, Alex, with a total of 50.5. This is mostly Virginia action from 23 to 21.5 on this game now. I
thought the bookmakers opened it right. I made it 24 here with Notre Dame, so it's a little bit of a lean here for the favorite. They've been playing their best football, and they have just been crushing people. So I lean to the favorite in this one as well, but it's a big number to ask.
Oh boy, this is a tough one because I'm looking for reasons to take the dog, but I can't quite get there because they also are coming off their best performance, arguably of the year last week, with their upset win against Pitt, with a total of 50.5 in this one today. I kind of like that under though, especially if this is going to be a scenario here where this is a game. All right, let's go to Colorado before we welcome Vinny in. This is a gigantic mover. And
yes,
it's from 10.5 to 13.5. This game starts in 15 minutes. Whew. Isaac Wilson led Utah out in warmups. Utah's aggravated me all year with the stupid quarterback stuff, and it hasn't really mattered since Rising's been hurt. It's been mediocre for the most part. You mentioned it earlier. I agree with you 100%. BYU shouldn't have the emotional letdown after last week. Utah, I'd be stunned if they don't. And I'm with the move here. I don't love laying it, but even at the worst of the number by far, this would still probably only be Colorado for me. It's hard to be on Utah this week after what happened to them a week ago.
It is really hard, but I think we are getting way too far. If that touches 14, I will definitely be on Utah. They still have a really good defense, and they're still really well coached with Winningham. So I wouldn't expect them to give up on him completely. 2 touchdowns, I would definitely. I made this 8. I have Colorado 8 at home here, but I think they're one of the more intriguing teams in the Big 12 that I think a lot of people are kind of rooting for to mix things up and maybe get into the playoffs here with how good they are playing and how much their defense has improved. So they've been covering too, Colorado. So that does, but I think that we're just getting a little bit out of hand.
This Colorado team, it's the complete opposite of last year because they came out red hot, everyone bought into them, and they ended up being a bad football team. This year, and sometimes a loss could be the best thing that happens to you.
That's true.
They get drilled by Nebraska, and everyone backed away. The unconvincing win against Colorado State, then they needed the miracle against Baylor, and it's like, this team's really not that good. But since that miracle against Baylor, they're 4-1. they've covered all 5 of those games. You mentioned it. They've covered all of them, including the loss to K-State they covered as well, depending on which number you got. But they covered most of the numbers that were out there. They've been a covering machine. And Shedeur Sanders, to me, is the best quarterback in the country. I know he's not in the Heisman race. His teammate Travis Hunter is the favorite right now, but Shedeur has been awesome. Yeah. And Travis Hunter's healthy, and the Heisman favorite playing both ways. So very, very impressive what Coach Prime has done there in Boulder. All right, we'll bring him in. We don't need a break. We only got 6 games to go on our list, so we gotta rattle through them with our friend Vincenzo. Vinny Magliulo's here this morning. Vinny, you have too many wires in front of you again.
Yeah, this is the Ralph Sirocco chair. Like I said, I think I've said it last week and got a good reaction. Ralph's got more wires than the FBI. Clearly, I'm afraid.
As long as that's green, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good. We're good. Sean got up midstream and made sure it was correct.
It's like it's like a pacemaker. My goodness.
Might be the size of your heart, honestly, Vinny, with how big it is.
Thank you.
I mean,
thank you.
Yeah, there we go. See, that being a compliment there. That was nice of me.
Very nice,
all right, Vinny, I want to ask you before we get into these remaining games that we have, and we've really hit the big ones here. So let's start with Georgia and Tennessee while you're in here.
Right.
Where Amali Alva looks like he's going to be good to go. Cleared. And the market's been interesting on this game where we expected the little Tennessee buyback. Got it back to 8.5, but Vinny, you guys just moved back to 9. Mm-hmm. So the Georgia buy is starting to happen already with Amali Alva even ruled in for UT.
Well, I think Georgia comes home now, right? Yeah. They've been away for a month. They've been doing a lot of traveling. I think it's a play on the number too, Jeff. I mean, they're definitely their offense. They score more points at home than they do on the road, and I think that's got a lot to do with it. And desperation mode. Although, when you look at Tennessee, it's not like they can afford another loss either. So, elimination game, quite possibly for these two teams. So, definitely for Georgia.
So Georgia, Vinny, I didn't even realize this, but you're spot on as always. October 12th was the last time Georgia played at home.
Right.
Now, they've only played 3 games since then because of the way the schedule has worked out. But for Georgia, that's an awfully long time away from being between the hedges there. So.
And they're a different offense, particularly between the hedges.
By the way, next week they play UMass. So that's –
well –
and you throw out the record books when the Bulldogs and the Minutemen do battle, Vinny.
I don't know if that's going to be. It won't be an elimination game. It could be a get well game.
Also,
that's for sure.
UMass played UMass with 3 SEC games this year.
Good for them. Right?
Yeah. Well, I guess so. I mean,
well, here's another thing. If you're a player on UMass, a little sidebar to that, what you're going to do is showcase yourself for the portal, right?
Yeah.
Why not? In the best conference in the country.
UMass playing Liberty today, and it looks like that line moved quite a bit, right? A lot of
so Chris Andrews, let's credit our guy Chris Andrews here, Vinny.
Yep.
Closing line value on the show yesterday for Chris, who gave this out at 14, and that's now Liberty 16 or 17. There's even 17. My goodness, for a game that starts early.
It's all about
destroying Liberty in that game in the betting
about
markets.
Liberty at the betting counter.
Good for the betting counter on that one.
They're betting that like they bet Tyson last night.
Yeah, well, that didn't work out for the bettors last night. Well, I will say, I mentioned it to Ralph, and this will be the only mention of that boxing match last night. Sometimes, Vinny, when things smell to be, don't pass the smell test. The smell test sometimes ends up being correct on that.
I can tell you
I know the bettors loved it, but...
hey, listen, we were standing room only.
Yeah.
Here. I mean, were you here, Alex?
I was not,
okay.
but I heard from Frank.
Well, Frank almost broke the two more televions in here. So
I think he was sparring.
Yeah.
He was doing a little shadow boxing. Great night though. A lot of fun. A lot of interest last night. So people starved for boxing to get back to its maybe to some prominence.
Need something better than that, though. Let's just go with that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go Florida LSU here, Vinny. How about all the Gators in this one? 4.5. got down to 3.5, then went back up the ladder, and now is all the way down to LSU 3 here. Again, the question mark more than anything is how healthy is DJ Lagway? He tried last week, didn't look great against Texas, but market likes Florida after LSU just got crushed by Alabama a week ago.
Maybe a little bit of a letdown too. Now LSU with they're out of the playoff picture, so
they need a lot of help.
Now they go to the swamp. Florida trying to right things. Outside chance of a bowl. You need a couple of wins for a bowl bid. So, but a lot of betting on this game all week, as you mentioned, and kind of toggled back and forth between 4 and 4.5. But now, since last night, money coming in on the Gators.
I like this Florida team. I would be on the dog here if I were to play this game. It did not make my card, which I'm surprised because I have been on these SEC dogs. But after that Central Florida win, and then Florida played Tennessee very, very close, and then destroyed Kentucky. So I do think this is a good football team, and they are playing pretty good. So if Lagway's any healthier, which I'm sure another week, I think that they could keep this game competitive.
It used to be the game that you stop your schedule for.
Yeah, it was typically a big matchup, not only for the SEC but nationally. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you stop your schedule for LSU and Florida. Not the case anymore. Nothing for me. I need to see how both. This is probably a great in-game game because you look at LSU. Does this just devolve the last few weeks after what happened last week? Or Alabama? I mean, Alabama whipped them. That game was a beatdown. And for Florida, where again, the effort, you mentioned it, the effort since the Central Florida game has been significantly better for them. Yeah. But your quarterback's not 100%. Even though this is the game, if Florida's going to get bowl eligible, they got to get this one because I don't think they're beating Ole Miss next week. They'll be big favorites at home against Florida State because Florida State's an abomination. But LSU, you got to win this one if you're Florida, if you're going to get bowl eligible. All right, let's go to Manhattan, Kansas. It always finds you, Vinny. Oh, the Little Apple always finds you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
7.5 with K-State, Alex. This has been a mover. As high as 9.5 down to 7.5. Looks like Scatterboo's going to be able to go for Arizona State. Both of these teams are alive in the Big 12 race. If they win, if either of these teams win out.
Elimination game, right? We talk about
this is a complete elimination game.
Complete one.
Yeah. If Colorado stumbles, the winner of this game is live to make the Big 12 title game, amazingly enough.
I have to stay off of this one. My Arizona State number is not correct. I just have to keep moving them up, and I still can't get high enough. So I still have Kansas State at 10 here. I like them, but another Big 12 favorite, so I'm going to pass on this one. But, credit to Dillingham, what he has done with this Arizona State team. Now I'm going on the road. Maybe this is a little bit of a tougher matchup,
sure,
Vinny, but
tough. This is a tough environment here. By the way, we've talked about what a surprise BYU has been, and they certainly have. I think Arizona State's I don't think we anticipated them to be in the conversation we're having today, right? That this that they're alive in the conference championship game discussion. I mean, obviously they need some help too, and it starts. They need this win here, but I think they've had quite a nice season too, and that not a surprise that they have the same record certainly as Kansas State going into this game.
Yep.
I thought Arizona State under 2.5 conference wins was awesome. It was not. It was not. Credit to Kenny Dillingham, young coach.
Good job.
That program is going in the right direction. And look, the Big 12 is going to be a topsy-turvy league every year moving forward.
I'm just looking at Jeff. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, Wrigley Field.
We were talking yesterday with Chris about the Cracker Box. Wasn't the soccer? Remember the last game I think at Wrigley that was played at Wrigley? They had to.
Only one way.
Because there was not enough room in one of the end zones.
Yeah.
So they did a reconfiguration. Still a small venue for a football field.
100%.
A great venue. I mean, I think it's
a great venue, period.
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's Wrigley. It's great.
Let's go to Illinois and Michigan State real quick. I'll just say this. So Aiden Childs looks like he's going to be good here, Vinny.
Yeah.
After suffering injury a week ago.
Was it his throwing arm? It was his throwing arm, wasn't it?
So 2.5 on this one with Illinois. I like the Illini. They've been fortunate this year, even though they don't show up as highly on the luck rankings as I thought they would. But this, I have to double check it.
Okay.
But this feels like, 2.5 at home against a Michigan State team that I really still don't think is all that good, even though they're better than we thought. Illinois would be the play for me at 2.5, Alex. And to answer your question on Illinois, luck-wise, is actually 26. So they're not even in the top 25 on the luck box rankings.
So this is one of my favorite unders as well, going under 48 here with these two. I mean, Michigan State's defense has been really good this year. They're 31st in total yards allowed. They're 5-4 to the under this year, and then Illinois 7-2 trend to the under. So more about their offensive struggling than so much their defense. But they play slower too, so I think this is a good underplay.
You're going to get the best number, Alex, because they did bet this over the 47. So if you're inclined to bet the under the 48, certainly better. And Illinois, not quite the same since that Nebraska win, you remember? And but either way, this I think there'll be more support certainly for Illinois in this game, even though they took the 3 with Michigan State. But I feel pretty confident that they'll bet Illinois not only laying the 2.5, but probably the money line as well.
Yeah, I would buy. There'll be in a lot of money line parlays today. That minus 140 price. Let's go to L.A. They're all about the corn in this one, Vinny. Nebraska bet from 9.5-point dogs to 7-point dogs in this game. Changes for both offenses here today. Dana Holgerson's now the play caller for the Cornhuskers. Yeah. Jaden Mayava, the UNLV transfer, now is the starting quarterback for USC. Again, for USC, if you lose this game, you're heading for 5-7, maybe even 4-8 when this is all said and done. This has been a nightmare for Lincoln Riley in year 1 in the Big Ten.
There'll be a South Point contingent at this game today in the Coliseum. Mr. Gone and some
It'll
of
be
the
the Nebraska contingent.
Well, not only that, but he went to SC as well.
Oh, so it's all the above.
He got
here.
his I think he got his master's at SC. So. Yeah, this is a good game. 1:00 on the calendar here, and it's been all about the Huskers, as you mentioned, Jeff. They took everything from 9.5 down. So one way on the on this game here, I think we'll see some SC money, but we're going to need them. And honestly, you wonder what's things have not panned out well since that first year when Lincoln Riley went there. It was there were high expectations. Caleb Williams, everyone that transferred from Oklahoma and went with him, all those skill position players, couldn't stop anybody, and haven't been able to stop anybody since. So, but definitely going to need the Trojans here today for the house.
I'm not that confident to bet either side with all those changes. You just said both offenses and coming off a bye, so this is just a watch and see what we get from both of them. This
is either going to be a wackadoo-over game or this game is going to land 17-10, which makes this a very difficult. I lean to the favorite, actually.
I do, too.
I lean to the favorite now that we're at 7. But this, because of the offensive changes on both sides, if you told me USC won some ridiculous 42-38 game,
you could see a wide open affair.
Yeah,
right?
Wouldn't shock me. If you told me that both of the adjustments didn't work on either side and Nebraska's offense continues to be in the toilet bowl like they've been and USC wins 23-10, yeah, I could see that too.
The total opened 50, went up to 52, and now down to 51.
Yeah, so the betting market's confused not at all.
Everybody's trying to figure that out as well.
All right, let's go to Madison here. We got 2 more games before we get out of here today. Wisconsin's 13.5-point underdogs against the number 1 team in the country, the Oregon Ducks. 50.5 the total. It's interesting. Chris talked about this yesterday. They took the 14, Vinny.
Yes.
But Chris talked about this yesterday where Camp Randall, great venue.
Oh, terrific.
Amazing at night. But Wisconsin has not been as good at home the last few years as you would normally expect them to be.
No, and we've had to adjust that power. Now, listen, all that said, by the way, you want to check Oregon's injuries here, right?
Yeah.
I think, and then they go into a bye next week, if I'm not mistaken.
Bye and then Washington in the air. Yep.
But they've got some injuries. They have played well, probably in terms of the playoff teams, I would say in the last month and a half, Oregon has played the most consistent football. They started off really I don't want to say shaky, but not as good as they've been in the last month and a half. So their depth has definitely shown, and I think it's going to need to here, because Wisconsin's going to be sky high for this one. They know that they've not been as good at home, and the fact of the matter is they want to get bowl eligible. So all those factors, I could see why they took the 14. But they've not really taken it the 13.5 either. So maybe a little bit of a wait and see approach here. A move to the under. I think that's a byproduct of Wisconsin's not really scoring a lot of points. And again, still going through a transition. Second year coach trying to change the identity of this team in terms of their offensive philosophy.
The thing that really kept me off this game was not even the score of Iowa 42-10 against Wisconsin, but looking in the box score, and they really struggled. I mean, 4.5 yards per play, and they were outgained 422 to 261, and now they're going up against the number one team in the country that has not lost yet. So it was tempting to take the points, maybe even at 14, but now here, definitely not a play for me.
I want to go with what Vinny said on Oregon, where it was a weird start to the season for them, where FCS Idaho was a fourth down stop away from having the ball down 3 late in that game. Boise State is really good.
We know they're good.
Oregon needed a field goal at the buzzer to win that game by 3. Then when the second half of that Oregon State game, the Civil War game, that's when the moment everything flipped for Oregon. Because that first half, Oregon State was in that game most of that first half.
That was a close
game.
And
then Oregon won by 35. Then, since that win against Ohio State, they've been, the last 4 weeks to me, they've been pretty clearly the best team in the country through the last 4 weeks.
Well, you can practice, right? But obviously it's difficult to replicate game situations, and new quarterback, especially. So the most impactful position, especially for the offense, right? Obviously, needed some time to adjust, and they've adjusted well. The fact of the matter is the fact that they are undefeated, a little bit of room for them, as well, right? To they could absorb a loss, and I'm not saying this is going to be a loss, but I can see why the bettors took 2 touchdowns in this one.
Before we go, Alex, home team today, UNLV, big favorites, 21.5-point favorites against San Diego State, total 54.5 on this one.
I've got nothing. I think that number is correct there. I do think that they are about a 3-touchdown favorite over SDSU right now at home, and I think that total is good. I bumped up a little bit, and I would lean to the over here. UNLV has not – their defense has been kind of slipping a little bit, so I do think SDSU will be able to put some points on the board, but I really think UNLV will run away with this one. So nothing for me.
The thing about it is this game, when we did our games of the year last summer, this was 10, but credit the Rebels for responding the way they have in the last couple of games after that Boise loss, and still with a hope to get to the Mountain West title game, a rematch with Boise, to beat them and get a consideration, maybe an at-large bid. I think it's kind of a long shot, really, for them, but that's certainly motivation.
Colorado's not making it easy.
No,
they just
they're not.
Keep winning.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Colorado State last night with the win against. Did they cover that game last night? Oh,
yes,
14. They did. Yeah, so they covered.
They did
against Wyoming. It's all going to come down to Colorado State and Fresno next week. If Fresno wins that game, then UNLV will get in if they win out against in that Mountain West title game.
Yep.
All right. We went along, so that's all we got for you here today. We're back in 24 hours from now. NFL, the whole card to break down tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. right here on Sports by the Book. Vinny, Alex, thank you. Sean, Drew Dog, thank you. Thank you to everyone in the chat as well. We'll see you again tomorrow at 9 a.m. on Sports by the Book.